Okay, I will now call the meeting to order. All the systems are working. Can you call the roll? Or would you please?
Chris Capezas,
Here.
Peter Dwyer,
Here.
John Miller, absent. John Brewer,
Here.
Ivan Heredia.
Here.
No, that was Ivan.
No, Ivan's not here.
She said Ivan. You're not Ivan, are you?
Yeah, I changed my name.
Absent. Jim Chard.
Here.
There you go.
All right, that I can get in from there.
Call my name.
Okay.
Oh.
All right.
You didn't call my name, Diane. You didn't call Kristen Finn.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I
Kristen
answered.
Finn.
Here.
Okay, can we have a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make the motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
I'll call the roll.
Okay.
I call the roll on that.
You want to call the roll on that one? All right.
Yes. Chris Capezas,
Yes.
Peter Dwyer,
Yes.
Kristen Finn,
Yes.
John Brewer,
Yes.
Ivan Heredia absent, John Miller absent, Jim Chard.
Here. Now the approval of,
No, we
she
got
did.
it.
Yes.
yeah,
He just said here instead of yes. It's one of those days.
It's okay. We know what you meant.
everybody's picky today.
No, I know.
All right, the minutes. I actually have a comment on the first minutes. Does anybody else want to discuss any of the minutes? And this is more of a issue of what goes into the minutes than anything else. And on the minutes of January 17th, under under some of the questioning, there was the applicant said that the windows were installed and we do not need to check with the staff before ordering windows.
Which item?
It's item. It is. I think it is the first one, but actually, I do have this in the wrong place.
Wait, is it item 8A?
Yeah, 2024-043,
Yeah.
202
Okay.
North Swinton.
B.
8B.
Yep.
B.
Certificate of appropriateness for windows, changes to window glass appearance.
Okay.
8B.
No, I wonder. I'm just wondering. There was the question asked. Chris asked the question. I asked the question. There was an answer from staff, and it had to do with the treatment of windows. So there was no response. I mean, there was obviously an answer that you made to clarify it to the board, but it didn't enter the minutes. And given that this is an issue that keeps coming up about windows, tints, EPA, and so forth, I felt that was something that was discussed and should be a matter of record in the minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Diane does her best to summarize them, and they shouldn't be necessarily like transcripts of the meetings. But if there's something particular that you guys want included in the meeting minutes, you can just approve them with that amendment, and she'll go ahead and put it in there for you. Or if you want to see them again, you can bring it back.
Yeah, I realize we don't want a transcription, but this is an issue that comes up
Right.
every other meeting and so, and I think I recall that Michelle opined upon it, and it should be in the record. If you could take a look at that again, Diane.
Sure.
All right.
And if you're okay with her just going back and making that change, and you guys approve as amended, she can make that change, or she can bring it back to you next meeting and you can approve the minutes. It's up to you.
I'm perfectly okay with approving as amended.
Okay, sounds good. So
All
if
right.
somebody
Would
wants to
somebody
make that motion.
Now I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
Second.
Call the roll.
Chris Cabezas,
Yes.
Peter Dwyer,
Yes.
Kristen Finn,
Yes.
John Brewer,
Yes.
Ivan Heredia absent, John Miller absent, Jim Chart.
Here. Yes. Whatever Kristen says. Swearing in of the public.
Just to make it clear, because since that was just for the January 17th, 2024, why don't we go ahead and do a motion for the February 7th as well?
All right. Chris?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from February 7th, 2024.
Second.
Call the roll again.
Chris Cabezas,
Yes.
Peter Dwyer,
Yes.
Kristen Finn,
Yes.
John Brewer,
Yes.
Ivan Heredia absent, John Miller absent, Jim Chart.
Yes. Okay, so that takes care of the minutes. Now, swearing in of the public. Anybody who intends to speak in quasi-judicial, kindly stand up and raise your hand.
Please raise your right hand. By the authority vested in me, the notary of the state of Florida, do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Comments from the public for items not on the agenda. Kindly give us your name and your address.
Good evening, Chairman Chard and esteemed board members. My name is Irene Ravelis. I reside at 331 East Atlantic Avenue. And I have a question tonight and some underlying facts. My question is, I'm trying to understand why the state of Florida, across multiple departments and entities, seems to care more about the 1959 historic George Washington Carver High School buildings and campus than the city of Delray Beach does. And I bring that question up because, as many of you may know, those buildings are owned by the school district of Palm Beach County, and school districts across the state have extraordinary powers in terms of what they can do with the buildings that are located in municipalities. In order to have a check or a curb on that power, there is a state statute that requires coordinated planning, and that state statute gets codified in every county and applies to every school district and every municipality who signs on. So here in Palm Beach County, we have a 2015 interlocal agreement for coordinated planning. And when Kerry Glickstein was mayor, he signed it. This was in 2017 on behalf of the city. So in May 19th of 2019, the Florida Trust for Historic Preservation nominated that campus and the buildings thereon as the 11 to save for Florida. And that's when all the buildings were intact. On May 21st, 2 days after that, there was a city commission meeting where the request by the school district to demolish all those buildings was denied by the state. So State Department of Ed sends it to State SHPO, to the State Preservation Office, and they said, no, you can't do this. And so the district set a meeting with a commission, and they came forward and said, gee, we don't really want to save any of the buildings, but we might save 12 or we might save the gym. They failed to disclose that on February 1st, the state had said, you can't do this. So we had the COO and the board member coming in from the district coming in and presenting to us what their plan was. Well, some of our commissioners said, wait a minute, 2 days ago, this was nominated as an 11 to save. Why are you looking to do this? And they said, oh, well, because we were told we could. By the end of that commission hearing, again, that was on May 21st, 2019, the decision was made by the school district and the commission that 4 buildings would be saved. 1, 2, and 12 would be donated to the city, and the gymnasium would be kept by the district, and they were required to historically rehab it. So now, fast forward to a few weeks ago, Board Member Ferguson from the school board came forward and said, we'd like permission to demolish building 2. So we have a legally binding mitigation agreement. By agreeing to not demolish those buildings, that was what enabled the state to give the school district permission to demolish 70% of the rest of the campus, which they did. So when the school district says, we don't want to, we want to demolish more buildings, the state properly said, well, you can't because you agreed to donate these 3 buildings to the city and to save them. So I'm looking to see if there's an opportunity to put this on the agenda before HPB with the hopes that we may take it forward to the city commission. Because so far we have the State Preservation Office, we have the State Secretary of State's office, we have the Department of Education office, have all said you can't demolish these. So, is that it?
Keep going.
So in any event, I was advised, this is just hearsay information, that the board member was told that the city won't agree to allow demolition of building 2. But, when the state is regularly saying these buildings are important, and across many years and many entities in the city of Delray Beach, these buildings have sort of slipped through the cracks, I really believe it's time to have a full hearing on it. So I appreciate your time and thank you for your consideration.
I do want to ask if there's anything we can do in the near term on this, because I think the city has the request before them right now from Commissioner Ferguson, and we should get on the record, I believe, as one board member, of supporting that history that Irene just went through, and a couple of others that I've received from commissioners, where all of this was memorialized in a letter from the city manager on June 3rd of 2019. So something that's been going on for 10 years is trying to be overturned in order for a parking lot to be put there.
Right. I think you guys have before transmitted a memo saying that you supported the resolution. I think it was the Historic Preservation Society had drafted, or Trust had drafted. So I think it would be the best time probably to discuss this a little bit more in depth would probably be during your board comments at the end of the meeting, and you can see if you have consensus from the board to do something like that, whether it's a memo or support of somebody else's memo or something like that. Or you can, at the end of board comments, if you haven't made that decision, if it's not a very quick discussion, you can ask to put it on an agenda for the next available meeting.
All right.
And see if you can get consensus from your board members.
There was some work done to create a visioning for what the 4 remaining historic buildings on the campus would look like as a
Ma'am,
unified campus.
Sorry, it's just the 3 minutes. So
Oh, sorry.
if
Okay.
you have something
Well,
that you want to give to
I
the
can
board,
give
you're
this to
welcome to
Diane.
pass it around.
And
I think it would be a really good idea if we connected offline, because some of the information that you discussed tonight, I'd like to clarify and make sure I understand.
I have all the documents because you.
So I will think we can connect offline.
She'll reach
and I
out
have
to
your
you.
number. We've talked before, but I would definitely, if you can't stay till board comments to listen, you could go back and watch the video of the discussion we have later.
Well, I would request that there be board comments because things are under threat right now and a request has
you.
been made. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair and Board, Roger Cope, Cope Architects and staff, Cope Architects, Inc., 701 Southeast First Street in the National Marina Historic District. I'm standing before you tonight. I'm so proud to announce the most incredible historic preservation event since 1988. The Preservation Trust has announced officially that we're seeking to individually designate the Veterans Park a historic site, an individually designated historic site. We're going to work with staff, we're going to work with you, we're going to put an extensive historical background document together. We think it's been far too long. It's been sitting there unprotected all these years. Kenneth Jacobson was the architect on the rec center itself, whether you call it a senior center or community center, whatever you want to call it. We're going to pay him homage in the architectural aspect of that building, but we're also going to protect the surroundings of the park, the actual Veterans Memorial itself, the gazebo, the fountain, the trellis, the shuffleboard courts, the lawn bowling courts. We're going to protect it from edge to edge to edge to edge. So it's immediately, it will be immediately adjacent to the individually designated bridge. The Atlantic Avenue Bridge is an individually designated site. So that plus the bridge leads you into the Marina Historic District. As you know, you can walk underneath the Atlantic Avenue. And so the whole thing is going to be the beginnings, we hope, of something magnificent, in a linear fashion up and down the intercoastal. And with the last bit of, I've got a 100-year-old little tiny farmhouse that I'm trying to give away to anybody who wants it. It's literally a cute as a button. It's a self-sufficient little tiny 14 by 20 A-frame. It was on a farm out in West Boca 30 years ago, and it was moved to the Bel Ida neighborhood. It's at 11th and North Swinton. It's not protected, but I'd love to find a new home for it. So if anybody knows of a potential, new home for it, all we have to do is just pay to move it.
Do you know any of the history of it?
Modern House Movers moved it 30 years ago. Gary and I have done a ton of business with Modern House Movers. He probably knows the history of it. It was on some sort of a farm environment way out west, and that's all I know. It still seems to have on the inside of it an original 100-year-old built-in cupboard that is just stunning. Unfortunately, it's outside of any historic district at the moment, so it's not protected, and the property owner is going to razz the entire property and build a big, gigantic mansion. So we're trying to save that little tiny thing.
On the other item, has the trust talked to the neighboring community about historic preservation? Well, actually, both Marina Historic District and Palm Trail. Of their opinion about historic designation?
We talked to the Palm of the Marina Historic District. Yeah, it's loosely organized, but and Palm Trail, we've been working with them to fight other things related to the park, not necessarily about the designation. But
okay.
Yeah, we'll talk to them about that.
And are you making an ask of us, or are you just?
I'm just saying, look for it in the future. It's not going to happen tomorrow. It's not going to happen next month, but it's going to happen.
Thank you.
So that we can secure what's there, for the next generation. There's playground. There's all kinds of things there that after second phase of Atlantic Plaza is completed, the park will, be reimagined. It's been shrouded, for the past few years. So.
And under the Atlantic Historic District, is that a contributing parcel and
Yes.
building?
Yeah.
It's been targeted as a,
Yes.
Okay.
so it makes sense as far as that goes.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Chard, can you bring this closer when you're talking?
Okay.
George Long, 46 North Swinton Avenue. He's entirely correct about the Veterans Park. They had a bad idea about where they were going to move that court. But anyway, I've been doing some research over the years on different types of takings. Now it's become a habit. Very familiar with the Burt Harris Act. I think we're going to have some trouble when we try to go back and work on Atlantic Avenue again to make it a historic district. It's kind of a classic case where that could be applied. And the Burt Harris Act, every time they revise it, they make it easier for developers to make claims. But I was wondering, is there any chance that we could get some developer or somebody that owns property along Atlantic Avenue, East Atlantic Avenue, to go ahead and designate it as a contributing structure and just give them lots and lots of transfer of developmental rights and things like that? Let them put a little plaque up there, like, I donated, I made this, it was my idea to make this a historic structure, and they can show it to their grandchildren or whatever. But is that a possible? Well, you can't answer that question. This is a one-way discussion, but I keep looking at ways. There must be ways to protect that East Atlantic Avenue, although I recognize that it's really a hard sell. There's been studies on it. In fact, Delray is mentioned in one of them, and it said it'd be a hard sell in Delray back in the 90s, that people weren't very interested in it. It's studies on transfer of development rights and things like that. Well, okay. Not too organized, but you got the point, right?
Yes.
Work on East Atlantic Avenue, try to do something.
We'll bring it up in the
Thank you.
comments. So. Anyone else? So I guess public comments are closed. Michelle, any presentations that you have?
No.
Does that mean we can move on to the quasi-judicial?
Yes.
All right. Okay, can you introduce the first item?
I think you can read the rules first, if you would, please.
This hearing shall be conducted in accordance with the City of Delray Beach quasi-judicial rules. The applicant and the city shall be permitted to present their case. The public shall be allowed to speak for 3 minutes each, or a maximum of 6 minutes if the person represents an organization or a group who are present but agree not to speak. The City Commission Board, members, staff, and the applicant may be allowed to cross-examine a witness. The city or the applicant will be allowed to offer rebuttal. The decision to approve or deny an application or an appeal may not be legally made upon personal views as to whether a project is a good project or not, nor may a decision be based on the numbers of citizens who support or oppose a particular project. The law requires that all decisions must be made on the basis of whether the project meets the requirements of the law, the comprehensive plan, the LDR's land development regulations. Now please introduce.
Yes. Good evening, Michelle Hoyland, Principal Planner for the record. I'd like to enter, this is actually waiver, so it's WAI 2024-156 into the record for Magnolia Place. And the applicant is here. Their agent representative will come up and make a presentation now.
And while he's coming,
Yes.
looks like you've got it, but while he's coming up, do you want to ask about ex parte communications?
Any discussions, John?
Nope.
None.
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 I had a brief phone conversation with part of the applicant team.
Mr. Chairman, board members, it's Gary Leopoulos. My address is 1045 East Atlantic Avenue. I'm with GE Architecture. We are the architects on this project. Also with me tonight is Chris Bernardo, Seaside's attorney. I think most of the board members saw this project. Tonight is a unique request in the sense that it's more of like a technical procedure. I think staff kind of spelled everything out. In the PowerPoint, I kind of just highlight their process that they went through. I think this board, for the most part, has never really dealt with this, because the fact is most of the time you're dealing with something in the historic district, you're dealing with one lot, and you're dealing with one structure. And so what happens is you normally cannot get a demolition permit for a structure until you go in for your full building permit, get your building permit, then the building can be demolished. What we have is a situation where we have 5 lots, 5 buildings. Here's where the conflict is. We can't get the property replatted because there are buildings on the property. So you have to have those buildings removed. Well, you can't get a building permit without the replat. So our issue is trying to get demolition for these structures so that we can get it replatted, so we can go in for a building permit. Tonight, what we're trying to do too is I think the policy when you're, let me try to go through this. So these were the structures that we did get approved. The plat is approved by the different boards. This is the location. I think most of you are probably already familiar with it. Southeast First Avenue and Southeast Second Avenue. So what's going on is the following. The reason why you have this type of a code for the historic districts is you don't want people demolishing structures and having vacant land just sit there. Our purpose tonight is that should we get a formal approval request from you guys, we're going to go to commission, and what we're trying to do is get not only demolition, but we want to come in right away with the foundation permits. We want to come right out of the ground. It's going to take a while to do these buildings. We feel that if you do take these buildings down, which have been neglected prior to our client owning them, it is blighted. We would now start seeing coming right out of the ground, which actually helps reinforce the district because you see new structures going in this area that's been definitely neglected. I'm going to go through as far as the issues that you see when you're reading in staff's report. Basically, what we're talking about is the sequence of demolition and construction of the approved project. The request at this time is the waiver of the Land Development Regulations, LDR Section 4.5.1F3. Demolition shall not occur until a building permit has been issued for the alterations or the redevelopment as described in the applicable certificate of appropriateness. So we've got the project approved. Demolition cannot occur until we get a building permit. Basically, what we are requesting is to allow 3 structures that are existing. They are non-contributing to actually be demolished upon the issuance of a foundation permit instead of the full building permits. It's also important to note that the approved plat cannot be recorded until the certificates of completion for the demolition of the existing building has occurred. The approved 5-lot plat would result in new lot lines running through the existing building. Therefore, you can't get the plat approved. Therefore, again, recording the plat requires the removal of the existing buildings. In the attached staff report, Magnolia Place, it is noted the need for demolition to occur prior to recording of the plat and require building permits for the redevelopment prior to this demolition. So there you go. You're seeing where the lot lines would be. You're seeing definitely in the middle where it is going through one of the buildings. On the south side, you're seeing that actually one would become non-conforming with setbacks. So as we kind of go through them, you have 3 buildings approved for demolition are not contributing structures. The plat cannot be fully executed and recorded until these existing buildings are removed. The applicant proposes positive work in the form of foundation permits for all 5 lots. The infill redevelopment has been approved for certificate of appropriateness. These are the buildings that this has been approved for demolition. We have the south building, which is a 4-plex. We have the one in the middle of the site. That's the one where the lot lines are going right through it, which is a duplex. And this one, I guess you'd consider a duplex. It actually has 2 structures. I think one got converted from a garage to a unit. So here we got the findings. LDR Section 2, 4.11.5 or B5 findings. Prior to the granting of the waiver, the granting body shall make findings that granting of the waiver shall not adversely affect the neighborhood area. The waiver will have a positive impact on the neighborhood area by enabling the removal of vacant, blighted buildings. The existing structures are non-contributing structures, and the infill development has been determined to be appropriate for the district. Approving the demolition with the issuance of positive construction permits suggests the intent to build the project rather than hold the land in a vacant state. Shall not significantly diminish the provision of the public welfare. Public facilities are not affected by this request. Approving the demolition will allow for the execution of the plat, which includes right-of-way dedications, which is also going to improve some of the streets surrounding there. Shall not create an unsafe situation. An unsafe situation will not result from the demolition of these buildings. Does not result in the grant of a special privilege in the same waiver that would be granted under similar circumstances on other properties for other applicants or owners. Again, I don't believe the board's gone before this item. It might have happened on Sunday Village. That's the only one that comes to mind that might have had this kind of a size to it. The circumstances of this request are unique. The structures are non-contributing. Not being able to record the plat creates complications with the permit review from intake through review process. There's the plat. It has already been done up. There's another thing that we have to do, which is a landscape disposition plan. We've already done that. That is ready to go in. These are just to show you a sample. The foundation drawings are ready to be submitted. Should we get approval, I believe we go to the commission on the 18th. These would be submitted as soon as possible so that we can start cleaning up the site and doing the foundations for these structures. One of the problems you run into is sometimes you don't have an architect that's quite quick to get the drawings done. So we are blaming him that he needs to get these buildings done. We're trying to say that we probably will have all the drawings done by the end of next month.
Can you blame yourself?
I can, and I don't even know if that goes on record. I think I do want to go on record for Roger Cope's comment. When it comes to that farmhouse, I will save that farmhouse. I live on the corner of 5th and 11th. I will be moving it. We'll talk. Anyways, that concludes my presentation. Should you have any questions, be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Okay. Michelle.
Okay. Okay, so the request before you is was well summarized by the applicant. It's a waiver. It's primarily relating to sequencing. The background on the project, as you know, this board denied the COA and associated requests along with the plat. Recommendation was denial for the project known at that time Downtown Delray Villas, and today it's known as Magnolia Place. It went on to City Commission and appeal and was approved on March 5th by the City Commission. The plat was also approved and it's completed, prepared. We have the Mylar, but it's in a holding pattern because we can't record it, and I'll get into why. So this is the property. It sits at the northwest corner of Southeast 2nd Street and Southeast 1st Avenue. It currently consists of 4 lots. The proposal and approval included replat and creation of 5 new lots. This is a photograph of the one structure that is on the property that our study that we did, which has not been adopted yet, identified this was the potential contributor, but today it is a non-contributor. So it falls under the code requirements for non-contributing structures. This is a quadruplex, and its twin or sister is over in the Marina Historic District. So there's another structure almost identical to this one in another district. Here on the right, you can see another multiple dwelling structure. I believe that one's also a duplex. And then this, these are all non-contributors. This is the one on the northernmost side of the 4-lot area. This is existing conditions. You can see that the way the lot lines are organized today, they fall within the lot lines for their current property. The new proposal for the 5 new duplex structures, which is a total of 10 units, we have 5 new lots. And hang on a second. Yeah, I did not mean to hide this. Sorry. Boy, getting old with your eyes really is hard because I can't see up there. So this is what the new 5-lot subdivision will look like, and you can see that one of the structures has a lot line going right through it. In order to move the project along, this is greatly a sequencing project. This is an issue with sequencing. We identified it with the original staff reports that came through the board and ultimately to the City Commission. But at that time, we weren't sure how we were going to handle it. Even if the applicant was submitting full permits today with the whole project for all of the new construction, we would still be in this situation where they can't record the plat, we can't create addresses, and that complicates our permit review process. So this is, as we look at this is inevitable. We don't have this up frequently. The applicant mentioned something about Sunday Village. There was a sequencing issue on Sunday Village, but it was fundamentally different than this. So the request is a waiver. The code specifically says, and this is for protection purposes, that building permits for demolition cannot be released until building permits for new construction are released. They actually happen normally on the same day at the same time. And that is to prevent loss of structures should the economy change and a development not proceed, or the developer changing plans and ideas and having vacant holes in blocks. So this was put in place many years ago to kind of thwart the speculation that was happening in the 1990s, I think. So this waiver would allow demolition of the 3 existing structures to be tied to the foundation permit. There are some relevant factors to the request. They're all non-contributors, even though one is a potential contributor. I remind you that the site plan, the plat, and all associated applications are not up for re-review tonight. This application is focused on the waiver. Again, the plat can't be recorded until the demolition. We have to have certificates of completion in hand in order to move the demolition through Palm Beach County. Otherwise, the new 5-lot subdivision will result with buildings straddling lot lines. So the applicant is proposing positive work with these foundation permits, and the project is approved. Here are the findings, which are outlined in your staff report, and we've done an analysis. I think the project meets the requirements for the findings. The board will have to make that determination, but nothing is glaring from a staff analysis perspective. We do identify that this is a unique situation, specifically meeting D. That summarizes my presentation, and if you have any questions, please let me know.
Any rebuttals?
Let's go to public comment first.
Okay. Public comments. I see no one. All right.
I have none.
Okay. The applicant?
I love staff's presentation. Very thorough, very good.
That won't gain you any points.
I know, I just thought I'd throw it out there for her.
Okay, to our board. Who would like to start?
I can start. I have a question. You said that the this approval is tied to the foundation permit. So those two are linked. So if this gets approved, that foundation permit also goes in and it must happen.
Close, almost exactly. The foundation permits, the applicant may have already submitted them. We created a route for them to get permits in as soon as possible by tying all permits to, I think it was 19 Southeast 2nd Street. So they may already be in, but it does become the basis for this waiver, and that's their presentation and request, and that we agree with it. So we wouldn't be issuing building permits without a foundation. We have to have some positive. Mm-hmm. So it's not listed as a subject to, mm-hmm. which I think is maybe where you're going.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. It's not listed that way in the the optional.
It's almost a promise from them more than.
It's more that the waiver itself would be waiving the requirement for the full construction, and it's allowing it to be tied to the foundation. But I understand where you're coming from, and if there was some type of language that could be added to the motion.
I think really what's happening is it's, like you said, it's waiving the other requirements, but it's still requiring the foundation permit. So it's not like this couldn't go through without the foundation.
It's in lieu of the full permit package.
Also,
it's
right.
the foundation plans.
And if I could add, we worked on the resolution today for the city commission item, and that is included in the resolution because this board is making a recommendation to the city commission, and the city commission will take action, final action. So that concern that you're raising is in the whereas clauses of the resolution. So it will be tracked. I think that's what your
Okay.
concern is, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, well, that sounds good. I'm in favor.
Well, I'm not. The code that's written, I mean, it's in bold letters there. The demolition shall not occur until a building permit has been issued for the alterations or redevelopment as described in the applicable COA. So basically, we're being asked to grant a waiver on a project that we denied on January 17th. I understand that denial's not, that part's not before us.
Right.
But now it's coming back to us because we denied it, it got pushed through commission, and now we're being asked to look at this. So that's my problem with this, is that the code was written for a reason. They're not required to move forward if they demo these 3 buildings. That's not a requirement. So it's like, okay, now we have to, I don't think it should fall back on us. It's falling back on us because of where it's located. Basically, that's why it's a special thing that's never happened before. If you guys are in agreement with me, I'm talking for discussion.
Yeah, no, I'm trying to understand what you're saying, because I remember that when we did vote on it.
It was 4 lots,
Right.
and
but-
they wanted to replat it to 5 lots.
Correct.
And now, because they can't replat because there's a building that's running through it, they're wanting us to give a waiver to grant the demolition of 3 of the lots so that they can possibly replat and do the foundation, but they're not required to do it.
Right. But what I'm trying to say, I think we all had issues with massing and some of the other things that were going on with the project as far as how it fit into the old school square historic district.
Well, we had
Now,
issues with
but
the waivers.
the way I look at it now is the commission's approved it. That ship has sailed, right?
but
So
not
now it's a
necessarily.
sequencing issue that we're working on. The sequencing of the
But
platting.
we still need to look at code. That's what I want everybody to look at. The code is written for a specific purpose, not to allow demolition before the permits are in place.
So if they had the full permit plans ready, would you
Let's
approve
ask
it?
Michelle.
I'm waiting for the question. If they were here submitting full permit sets and weren't going to ask for any waiver to this, we would still have a sequencing problem.
But you still don't have a full permit plan in
I
place.
don't know that I'm characterizing it clearly. The conversation that occurred and the sequence review between all of the city staff members, and there were quite a few directors and engineer and everybody, is we can't issue building permits even if they had the full package because we don't have addresses to tie them to. So there would be a waiver somewhere, somehow. And what we've agreed on with the applicant is so that there is a comfort level that they're not completely waiving the whole code. They've said, let's tie it to foundation. And we felt like that's a positive work. But they would have to come in and ask for a waiver regardless. We can't record the plat and create lots and have that done through Palm Beach County and issue building permits. It's a sequence issue and this is not the only time it's happened in the city. It's happened outside of historic district, and the same thing had to run through a waiver. So it's while the historic piece wasn't attached to that, the waiver issue still had to run through because we can't issue permits for lots that don't exist.
Right, I get it. It's like what comes first, I get it. But
It's not
but
even
it's
so
hard.
much what comes first as nothing can happen.
Right. Well, my whole issue in the beginning was the waivers, because you're initially starting with pay dirt. It's not like you're trying to squeeze something in and do all the things. So when they do the demolition or whatever, it's still going to be pay dirt. So I can't get behind something that goes directly against code, and that's what we're supposed to be looking at is LDR 4.5.1 F3.
I have a question. When staff sat down with the applicant, was a waiver suggested by staff as the way to solve the sequencing problem?
I don't know that I was in the meeting where that occurred, but we knew once the commission approved this project, and if you look at the original resolution that went through for the plat and the COAs, we knew this was going to happen. This has been on our radar from the first TAC, and it was, how do we handle it? And then we had another project outside of the historic district that went through a similar circumstance. So we relied on an example of how was that handled. So I can't answer because I don't know if it was us or the applicant, and I may not have been in the meeting where it was determined. So I don't know.
It just sort of sounds like it was one of the, what do they call it, deadly embrace, that you can't move forward or backward, and that it might be something that the staff had recommended as a way forward.
It could have been. I don't want to commit to say
Yeah.
staff made a suggestion of how to get around the code, because that's not our typical practice.
Right.
And we
Okay.
we
All right.
train new
Peter.
hires not to do that.
Okay. This waiver request is reasonable. This project is approved, and this is a very reasonable request. I don't see any reason to delay it. I think that it's a good project, although we didn't vote for it initially. I think overall it's a good builder, good project, and not supposed to say it's good, but it's good looking. So I'm in favor of it. Thank you.
Well, I respect what Kristen is saying, but I do think there is basically a procedural issue here that waivers we try to stay away from, but they do serve a purpose, that the LDRs as written don't imagine all the situations that it could occur. And I think that with the moving from 4 parcels to 5 and with one of those buildings straddling, I think this is an opportune time to use a waiver. But I appreciate your...
I respectfully disagree, but yes,
okay.
we are not in agreement with this.
Okay, well, I'm glad you uphold the LDRs. That's good. I did have a little bit of an offside question here. That third building, does that have any historic significance or any reason for trying to save that building, as we heard earlier with
Is it
farm?
that one?
Yes, that one.
I don't know. I know that originally the original owner had this property and they were looking at something to save. They literally, I believe, and I'm probably wrong on this, Michelle might know, I do believe part of it was a garage. Somebody converted to an apartment. We didn't find anything on it, and somewhere during, I think it was either a planning zone, there was somebody dedicated or designated this as not being contributing. That's all I do know, but I know the previous owner was renting it out. He did have us in there, and it basically looked like it was a garage that was converted to an apartment.
Okay.
I know, and I do want to say for the record, because I didn't realize, Michelle, with regards to, and I realize it's not going to make the board feel any better, but the comment with regards to foundation, I actually was waiting purposely for commission. We'll submit all 5 foundations tomorrow if we can start the process. So I want you guys to be relieved of the fact we are not delaying this. I just felt I had to wait, but if we can submit, we will submit.
We're ready for you.
Okay.
You asked a question about saving a building.
Yep.
Which I think that is a side question that's not really relevant to the request, but it is a fair question. So, that isn't something at this point that this request can condition. This building here has been modified, which is why it's considered a non-contributor. It does not appear as it originally did, but it is very old. So I think it's a fair question that you're expressing interest about saving structures to the applicant, and I think they're hearing what you're saying. So if there is any opportunity for a save and move type of thing, but you couldn't condition this request on that.
Oh, I wasn't intending to
I'm sure you
suggest
weren't.
that.
I just wanted to be clear on the record.
I just know that this board has a history of saving and moving buildings, and was really asking the architect whether or not this is one that we should even think in those terms.
Sure, yes.
So, okay. Motion?
I'll make a motion to recommend approval of the waiver 2024-156 for downtown Delray Villas, aka Magnolia Place Old School Square Historic District, by finding that the request and approval thereof is consistent with the comprehensive plan and meets the criteria set forth in the land development regulations.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Call the roll.
Chris Cabezas,
Yes.
Peter Dwyer,
Yes.
Kristen Finn,
No.
John Brewer,
Yes.
Ivan Hurdy absent, John Miller absent, Jim Chard.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, I'll enter the next project into the record, file number COA 2024-150 for 108 North Swinton Avenue. I believe the architect, is here, and would you mind pulling up their presentation?
Okay. Ex parte?
Nope.
None.
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 All right, good evening, board members. My name is Simeon Kirilov with Steve Siebert Architecture at 1010 Gateway Boulevard, Unit 103. I'm here before you regarding the 108 North Swinton Delray Beach house, the Pickett residence. This is one that you guys approved, it was almost 2 years ago now that the building was approved. We're under construction. The building is pretty much completed. We're ready for our final inspections. However, during construction, there was a couple of issues that we ran into. We submitted it back to the board, and the board recommended we come to you to take a look at those items. So this is basically a picture of what the building currently looks like. It's identical, almost identical as to what was approved, other than one item, which is the trellis, and I'm going to go over that. So here's a couple more pictures of the existing building. Again, nothing really has changed construction-wise. We followed the drawings as approved for the most part. Here is the site plan. As you can see, nothing really has changed on the site plan. The biggest thing to note here is that we are asking a request on a material change on the front gables, which it's on the south side gable on the front porch, and on the east side, which is the front lower roof and the upper higher roof, which is a small little gable end. Here are the existing elevations. Nothing really changed on this particular elevation. The north elevation stayed the same. The south elevation remained the same as well. Nothing really changed there. The only change is if you take a look at on the south elevation under the proposed, where the original porch was that was closed off when we opened it. If you can see, there's a scalloped siding on there. That's where our material changes on that scalloped siding. So it's just that little triangular piece. Same thing with the east and the west elevations. The building is pretty much exactly as is. As you can see, on the east elevation, the two gable ends on the left side, the one on the right is far back, and that's the new addition. But the ones on the left side, those were the existing gable ends where you see the scalloped siding. Here is a rendering of the items that we're proposing. So just to go over it, the history, the first item we want to go over is the scallop siding. The scallop siding remained the same as approved by the board. We're not changing the color. However, during construction, this was just coming out of COVID, and we had a very hard time finding a wood material that was similar to the hardy board that we were already working on installing in the back of the property. Either it was too small, it was either too big, or it did not meet the requirements of the wind load. So we had a very hard time in finding a material for that area. So we made the call to go with a hardy board siding for those gables to basically close up the house and water it down. Everything else on the original building is out of appropriate materials, made out of wood. The only one is just that scallop siding that we had to make a call on, and it is a fibrous material, so it's not a plastic or a vinyl. The other change we had to make was on the trellis. The trellis, once we ran into an issue to where when we tried to embed the wood into the ground, it wouldn't connect properly, so we had to add bases to it to strengthen it and then attach it down to the ground. The bases were not part of the original approval. We did try to minimize the size of those bases to make them as small as we could while still being able to hold up the structure. We did match the stucco siding that's on the wall that was approved, and we also have landscaping around it, which you will see at the end, to kind of help minimize that and reduce that element. And then the last change, which is the third one, this was not part of the original approval, and we want to bring it up to the board, is we want to add shutters to the front triple window. The shutters were not part of the original approval. However, we felt that it would be a nice added element rather than the flat facade to add, something a little different to the house. And they are going to be accented to a blue. I know it seems more like a darker blue, but we have the color. We submitted the color sample to the board. It's a more muted blue. And in terms of sizing, since it's a triple window, what we did was we matched the size of that shutter to be with the windows to the left and the right. The middle window is a little bit bigger than the side ones, so we matched the size to the side windows. So if they were functional, to close them, it would cover up the left and the right windows completely. And then here is a picture of the front, pretty much the completed front with the bases. Again, the shutter doesn't exist. That's why we're here asking for the board. And of course, the gable ends that you can see where we're asking for that particular material change on the front facade. And that is it. Thank you.
Thank you.
For the record, my name is Michelle Hewitt, planner, and again, this is agenda item 8B for 108 North Swinton Avenue. Here we have an aerial of the subject property outlined in blue. North Swinton Avenue is on the right or east. There's an alley in the rear, and the Northwest First Avenue is to the south. Here we have, so this is the original structure prior to any improvements. This is the front or east elevation. This faces North Swinton Avenue. Here we have the east or front elevation during the construction process, and one essentially finished or completed, nearly completed at this point of the front elevation. Here we have the south elevation. This is closest to Northwest First Avenue. This is prior to any improvements. This is on the right there with the windows is where the porch was reopened. And then this is it opened during the construction process. And then on the south elevation here, more completed version. Then here we have the west or rear elevation. This is where the addition was approved to go. So this is prior to improvements. And then here it is today, essentially completed. So the subject request does include modifications to the approval, some brief history. The subject property is located within the locally and nationally designated Old School Square Historic District and contains a contributing one-story bungalow-style structure constructed in 1925. The structure is currently being utilized as a single-family residence. As previously mentioned, in February 2nd of 2022, the Historic Preservation Board approved a new addition and exterior modifications to the structure. So here we have the survey prior to improvements with the one-story single-family residence, highlighted in blue. This is the approved site plan, the original structure highlighted in blue, the approved addition in red, and the pool and the trellis feature on the top right highlighted in red. So here we have on the top is the existing front or east elevation. Again, this faces North Swinton Avenue. At the bottom is the approved with the red elements being the newer added elements that were approved. And then here you can see the yellow highlighted elements are the proposed composite or hardy board scalloped gabled edges highlighted in yellow, and then on the right is the stucco basis for the trellis on the bottom. We did not include the shutters, so that as the applicant indicated, so I don't know if we just include that because they're here to request it, but it wasn't analyzed in the staff report. And then here we have the existing side interior or north elevation on the top. And then at the bottom is the approved side interior or north elevation. And then the two stucco bases at the bottom highlighted where they're going to be located. Oh, what's going on? Oh, there we go. Okay, and then on the top you can see the existing side or interior, the south elevation, and then the approved of the south elevation. And then here in yellow is the proposed area where the scalloped, the composite or hardy board siding is going to go. And then here we have the rear, the existing on the top, again in blue, and then the approved the rear or west elevation at the bottom. This portion of the approval already was approved to have hardy board scalloped siding or the gable ends. So there's no modification to this portion of the structure. Here was the approved rendering with the wood trellis features, the wood going all the way down. Then here you can see the proposed with the stucco bases, and then you can't see material, but the scalloped siding is proposing to go from wood to hardy board. Some staff report excerpts here. On the top is regarding siding in regards to the Secretary of the Interior standards. Per the standards, the use of composite materials is not typically considered an appropriate approach when replacing wood elements, but the board will have to make a determination that it's not only most appropriate for this particular instance. And then in regards to the trellis, the alteration can be considered appropriate for this site as the overall trellis is shorter than the front main structure, is set back from the front facade, and retains the appearance of an accessory structure. And then here we have two excerpts from the staff report as well in regard to visual compatibility. From the top, for siding, again, as previously mentioned, it's a composite material, so there is concern about using authentic materials. It is noted that the board approved the use of hardy board gable material in the rear of the property, as it was associated with the new addition, eliminating any negative effect upon the historic structure. The applicant has indicated there is difficulty meeting wind load calculations and insurance requirements with the custom wood siding. And then at the bottom, we have visual compatibility regarding the trellis. There are no proposed modifications to the approved overall height of the trellis, which was already substantially lower than the height of the residence. The proposed modification to the trellis is not anticipated to affect the front facade portion of the property, and the proposed stucco footings / bases on the trellis can be considered compatible with the materials utilized in the existing structure. As such, stucco is a material that could have been utilized during the original time frame of the structure's construction. So here we have the Secretary of the Interior standards that were used to analyze this, with the highlighted elements being the main ones that pertain to this request. And then here, for the visual compatibility standards, again, the highlighted elements are particular to this request. And here are the findings that staff used and for the board to use for this request. That concludes my presentation.
Public comment.
George Long, 46 North Swinton. I have followed this project very closely. I won't get into my background, but I have reasons to be following that type of thing. I have looked under the house, side of the house, around the house. I have probably 50 or more photographs following it all stage through stage through stage, and what an outstanding job. You guys would not believe, from the viewpoint, the sidewalk, what all was involved in that. That house was sitting on tile instead of the concrete blocks, turned on its side, hollow, with rotten, totally rotten floor plate. I don't know how it stood, to tell you the truth. They had to take all that down and put I guess you'd call it a stem wall concrete block instead of that tile on its side, and replaced all that board. And then I've looked under the house, and they had pads, column pads, footers, all underneath there to support their new work. So I guess the point is, just from the get-go, they have just done everything possible. I could never afford it, I'll tell you that. I mean, even to start with, on that old original portion, they did everything possible to save that and make it strong. And I have the photographs, so you're going to see them, right from the start all the way up to the end. I was so nosy that when I met the new superintendent there, the next day they put up a no trespassing sign. That's true.
Well, thank you for the on-site local report in color.
Roger Cope, Cope Architects again. Mr. Long, he polices everything on Swinton Avenue.
He's the eighth member of this board.
He maybe a future board member. I just want to say that I'm completely in favor of Mr. Simeon's presentation. The house is a very high-profile house, being right across from the Historic Society. We've all been watching it, and I'm doing one at 202, 3/4 of a block away. And, we're out on the site looking down at what they did and trying to figure out if that's what we should do, kind of a thing. So everything that they've done on that house is kind of world-class. These are tiny little incidental things for the most part, maybe except for the shutters, that happen during construction. Construction is thousands of decisions are made on a daily basis or weekly basis that influence the final product. But I think these things are very, very supportable. I would endorse the shutters. They add a splash of color onto the house. It's a little monochromatic right now, very white. I wish she would have added them to all the windows that were viewable from the public right away, but I won't go that far. She might even add hardware to the shutters, but I won't go that far either. But as presented, it's very supportable. I think you guys should get him on his way. She also, Mrs. Pickett, she bought a spectacular historic preservation project over on Dixie Boulevard while she was doing this one. So she has multiple historic houses. She's a great lady.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Any rebuttals?
Yes. So first, I want to congratulate this owner on a beautiful renovation. I drive by it all the time, but it's kind of one of those things you pass by and don't look, and then I one day looked and I was like, wow. Just this, and I just want to be clear and say this because I'm about to say something that's not in agreement with the code. Anyway, it's a really well executed historic project with the addition in the back and all of the steps that they took to make the front of the front facade and the historic structure, restoring it, bringing that porch back. with that said, regarding the shutters, we did have a question from the owner about adding shutters to these windows here, 3 windows, and a planter box. We had suggested that they submit that as part of the application and get the documents pulled together before it went to the board. So this is the first time we're seeing that. And the analysis, could we go to their presentation that shows those shutters?
If I could save you just a little bit of time,
Yeah.
I would recommend to the board, since this hasn't been put into the application and it's not a part of what's before you today, that you don't rule on those and have them go through the process and come back to you with the shutters. They haven't had an opportunity to review it, and it's not right for you guys to review it on the fly either. You should be able to see materials. So.
And we would like to be able to speak with the applicant about possible solutions if they're, the review, if it were to be that it wouldn't meet the requirements of the code or whatever. I'd like to be able to talk with the owner about what options there are, and if there was going to come a request come forward, give them an understanding of what the staff report would look like. So I don't agree with adding the shutters.
It looks like he's shaking his head as well too from down there. But if you wanted to say something,
Yeah, just to clarify, that would be okay with the owner. So, we do understand this was kind of like a last minute request. I thought we got it in time, but if the board feels that we didn't, that's fine. She is willing to remove those if needed. So I did speak to her about that already. So
Okay.
she's fine with that.
But we could definitely have a conversation
Yeah.
offline and figure out if there's a route forward.
Okay.
And
No,
bring it
that's
back
fine.
so it's a quick review.
And would that include the consideration that the previous speaker spoke of, with maybe a little bit more color or hardware?
We could talk about that. Hardware is typical. It's in the design guidelines that when you're adding shutters to use shutter dogs. So that would be one of the things we would talk about with them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else?
I just want to make one quick clarification on the slides that we saw. The only part that is a composite material is the scallop. The trim that's around, that's all wood, and also the vent in the middle, that's also wood as well. I just wanted to make a clarification in case there was any questions. It's only the scallops that are fibrous. The trim work around and the vent, that's all wood.
Okay.
And before you leave, Simeon,
Yes.
Maybe you said this. Is the hardy board already in place?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, we had to close up the building due to water, and we had to make a decision on the fly, unfortunately.
Comments from the board? Who wants to start?
I'll go ahead. Yeah, it's funny you said that, Michelle, because that's exactly what happened to me a couple days ago. I drive by that. I do that drive all the time. I don't know what happened. They painted it or something got finished, but my head snapped. I turned around. I was like, "Wow, what a great job!"
I think it was the construction cars were all gone.
I think the cars were gone or
And the
something
grass
happened.
went in.
But I
The
drove by the
plantings.
other day and
And the
I
plantings.
said, "Wow, that looks great. It really does." I see what they're trying to do with the trellis. Obviously, it seems like there was a support issue with that, and then with the scalloping, I think it adds a lot more interest to the front there. I understand we're not really dealing with the shutters right now, but judging from the kind of work that the client has put into that, I can't imagine they're going to put any kind of shutters in there they're going to take away from it. But I understand the process has to be respected. But as far as the two things that are being brought in front of us, the trellis and the scalloping, I'm behind those 100%.
Just a question. Would it have to come back before us on the shutters, or is...
Could we give
So
to
if
the board?
I would, if I'm not in support of, or if I find that the submittal doesn't meet the requirements of the code, the applicant has a right to due process. So they could come back and say, see a staff report that maybe is identifying concerns, and the board could deliberate and make decisions. So it would probably come back in the configuration that was shown in their drawing. So I would feel more comfortable. if it were like an amended application to this or something.
But couldn't we do like in the previous situation where we would say that?
I'm not comfortable with that.
Okay.
I would like to be able to talk to her about it before I would air out the concerns for a future application here at the board. But there's very specific concerns that we have.
Okay. Kelly, you were shaking your head in agreement.
I'm agreeing with her. I don't think that they've had the ability to even get that far to tell you whether, you know, it's administrative approval or if it's something that they could potentially not bring to you. So without them being able to do that, you know, it's not under your consideration at this time. So that's why you really can't,
good.
you know.
Kristen, other thoughts?
No, I'm in agreement. The stucco supports on the trellis, like the staff report said, it kind of mimics the porch a little bit. It could take away, but I think for the weathering purpose, I know we had a trellis at one point, and when the wood sits directly on the ground, it's gonna rot. And it sits far enough back that it doesn't take away from the front structure. I think you guys did a fantastic job on this project, and it has all the front facade that the original one did. It just, you've uncovered all the beauty and added to it. So great job. It's a very great addition to our historic district.
Chris?
I have no issues with any of the items. It's a beautiful project. I think it's been well done and well executed, so congratulations to the applicant on that. I have no issue with the siding or the stucco base. I was wondering though if, and maybe it's just a question, if that foundation could have been lower, because it is a few feet taller. Could that have been underground, that concrete base, and you've anchored into it, or did it have to be that tall?
Unfortunately, it did have to be that tall because the point was for us to bury it, but we ran into some issues doing construction, which is why it's at that height. Because we need to have the wood covered. I think it was a minimum of 24 inches for the fort to keep it from pulling out. And we did want to have it below grade, but we ran into a couple of issues, and we just couldn't. We couldn't put it below grade.
Okay.
Can you expand on that a little bit? What kind of issues would cause you?
It mainly had to do with the grading. So the way those bases are built is you have to have a pad, but those pads can only go a certain depth underneath the ground. And when we did all of this civil work, that pad had to be, I don't remember off the top of my head, it had to be at a certain height. But then the problem is when the pad is at that height and then you put the covered base, it ended up being higher than the finished grade of the building, because the house does sit, I think 24 inches or maybe a little less than 24 inches above the finished grade. So it was a grading issue that we ran into.
Chris, anything else?
No.
You're okay. I had a couple quick questions. One of my questions, I guess, is academic. If the scallops are already up there and they're hardy board, I was going to ask, now that the pandemic is over, aren't those materials back available again in the supply chain?
I can't answer that question, but they might as well be. Yeah, they could be.
Okay. And I guess this doesn't really come before us, but backing out of that trellis, I'm assuming that the idea is that people can park on that driveway, but they back out onto
Yes,
Swinton?
it backs out into Swinton. Yeah, the original. Well, I don't remember what the.
And that's
original driveway is.
grandfathered in. It's okay.
But the driveway's in the back too.
Well, we added that. There
like
wasn't
any
a driveway in
Yeah.
the back. That was an addition that we did because of the front. But there was a driveway at the originally on the front of the building as well. Well, to the side of it, I would say.
It's just very dangerous when
Yeah.
on that street.
So is backing out of George Bush. I've been doing it for 20 years.
Yeah.
So when you
You're
get
still with us?
when you get used to doing it, it's like playing Frogger.
But you are correct. That was one of the reasons why Ms. Tracy wanted the garage in the back, and we worked hard to put the garage on the back, so at least majority of the time she's going to be using the back.
Okay. Okay, I think that was all my questions. Somebody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the certificate of appropriateness 2024-150 for the property located at 108 North Swinton Avenue, Old School Square Historic District, by finding that the request and approval thereof is consistent with the comprehensive plan and meets the criteria set forth in the land development regulations.
Second.
That was well read.
Practice.
Yeah, lots of practice. Diane, call the roll.
Chris Cabezas,
Yes.
Peter Dwyer,
Yes.
Kristen Finn,
Yes.
John Brewer,
Yes.
Ivan Hurdy absent, John Miller absent, Jim Chard.
Yes. Congratulations, thank you. Next item.
I'll read this one into the record. File number COA 2024-134 for 170 Marine Way. Katharina Paliwoda will be representing this project tonight, and the applicant's agent is here? Yes? Okay. And they will start us off with their presentation.
Okay, any conversations?
No.
From the applicant?
None.
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 Good afternoon. Thank
Good
you for taking the time to see us. My name is Mark Hunley. I'm one of the managing partners and owners of Charette International Architecture, based out of Boca. And with us is actually the owner of the house, Angie Porter. This is the Marina House. Basically, the history on this project is that the board previously approved this project as a whole, and construction commenced with those plans that had a certificate of appropriateness issued for it. I know that the staff report includes the specific dates, but there was a full set of plans done for it. Construction proceeded under those. That action and all of that information was actually done under a previous architect, and from my understanding, a previous owner as well. Ms. Porter bought this project after that certificate of appropriateness had been issued. So basically what we're doing today is taking a few things that are owner-driven, a few things that the interior decorator she's working with has coordinated with us and are driven, a few things that are construction-driven, as we found things during construction and demolition, and we're kind of combining it all into one in order to bring it to the board's attention and show you kind of what's going on. See if I'm doing this right. So location, Southeast 2nd Street and Marine Way. Right there on the corner, a couple of site photos of what's going on right now as far as construction goes. I think the one on the left, if I'm not mistaken, was taken just about the time we stepped in as the architects of record on the project, Paul, Charette, and myself as partners. The one on the right is much more recent, as you can see, following the certificate of appropriateness, the plans that were issued at that time, including the elevating of the finished floor, thankfully, there on Marine Way. Another front down the side showing some of the outdoor work that's going on next to the pool with the breezeway. And then from the rear, this is going to be one of the areas that we talk about briefly today. That rear stair will come up during our conversation. And then the last picture, due to all the trees that are on site, kind of hard to tell, but that is actually from the corner. That's on the southeast corner looking northwest. So that's the one that actually faces the street corner. So, as I mentioned, it's quite a few of the small items that have come up during the process. For instance, number one, the new white aluminum railings and handrail added to the front porch. I'll highlight where that is in just a second. The only reason that has come up is because both during the original architect's presentation and during the building department review, the fact that there's a 30-inch fall from the porch to the ground was missed, and a railing is required there, and therefore, et cetera, et cetera. That's the kind of thing we're looking at here. The new rear stair configuration just actually takes the stairs from being a straight down run and actually splits it into a scissor stair, which I'll show you in just a moment. Tiled wall for outdoor kitchen in the rear. That is a interior decorator driven item that they have coordinated with us. Change in paver material, a little bit of work on the artificial turf. We've got some color, just a couple minor color fluctuations that we went through. New aluminum fences and gates with the columns on the east and the south there on the street side, and then a sliding gate for the door and the new front door selection. So like I said, a couple from everything. This is the previously approved site plan that the board approved under the previous certificate of appropriateness. This is the current one that's underway. I've highlighted some of the areas in yellow. For instance, on the front porch, I talked about the railings already that have a more than 30-inch drop and are therefore required by code. In front of the driveway there on the east side, that's actually the gate that I briefly mentioned. Just north of the pool is the barbecue wall. And the second floor, I show it as previously approved just so that you see what's here, but there's actually no changes happening. Actually, that was first floor, I'm sorry. We zoomed in a little bit. Again, same thing. We're looking at the front porch. We're looking at the rear stair. As you can see, the rear stair now actually splits as a scissor stair instead of dumping you directly into the pool. And then the barbecue wall in the back. We've got some elevations drawn, and I'll show the tile here in just a second. And then the columns and fence down at the bottom is an elevation that were part of the original submitted package. Front elevation, we've got the front railing, and if you notice, it matches the exact railing that was approved under the original certificate of appropriateness, and copies it down to the front porch. It's just being added for code requirements. The chimney is the one thing that kind of came up during construction. During the construction process, the chimney wasn't so much accidentally removed as the chimney removed itself and came down, and so it has been rebuilt. And the original certificate of appropriateness was that the chimney was going to remain. So now that it's going to be rebuilt, we actually found and sourced a brick that we've taken the time to hand saw off the veneer off of the brick in order to apply, in order to match materials to match what was originally slated to remain. So when it removed itself, we tried our best to put it back, is what I'm trying to say. So we're here with that. Front gate there on the driveway. And then the south elevation, you can see the existing, already approved on the bottom. Up on the top, we're just talking about the chimney. We're talking about the front porch. And we're talking about the privacy wall behind the barbecues. Here's what I meant about the stair. It used to come straight down and essentially terminate 2 or 3 feet from the pool. Now it switches and slides sideways. And then just the north view, same items that we've already discussed. Some renderings. You can see on the bottom, that's the corner view showing the fence, the columns that are going to be in place. It was originally slated as a 5-foot high, and then we were informed it needs to be 4 foot by requirement, which the owner and everyone has agreed to drop down to. And then the upper photo shows the man gate at the back of the driveway leading into the backyard. That is on the north side of the property. This is the barbecue wall I told you we would come back to. It is set well back into the property. On the right-hand side, you can see the back wall of the residence. This is on the north side of the pool, faces south from this view. And the front door was the last item that was coming in. And this is the front door that the interior decorator selected and we worked with them on. And then a color palette. I believe these were just refining slightly. I don't believe they changed much from the certificate of appropriateness. It was just a few slight hue adjustments, if I'm not mistaken. And then showing some of the colors in. And that basically concludes our presentation. As I mentioned, it was just kind of a cohesive gathering of all of the items that have come up through those multiple avenues. I'd be happy to answer any questions, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Okay,
For the record, I'm Katharina Palavoda, Historic Preservation Planner. Okay, this is a COA request, specifically for the reconstruction of an existing chimney as well as some exterior modifications. The property address is 170 Marine Way, and this is a circa 1939 two-story A-frame vernacular structure. It was relocated to the subject property in 2012, and it was subsequently individually designated to local register of historic places within the Marina Historic District. Okay. So along with the reconstruction of the chimney, as Mr. Hunley did mention, while working through permits on site, the chimney did fall, and because the original certified request did say that the chimney was going to remain, they had to come back to the board for the request because since this is an individually designated structure. Some of the other requests along with the chimney include the white aluminum railings and handrails that are added to the front porch of the structure, the main structure. New reconfiguration of stairs on the rear west side of the main structure, the tiled wall for the outdoor kitchen, change of paver material from marble to shellac in the rear of the site, the addition of artificial turf to the backyard, change to exterior colors for the facade awnings and shutters, as well as new aluminum fences and gates with the columns on the front east as well as the side street. And then finally, the sliding gate for the driveway and the new door. So here is the existing front elevation. So we can see in the very top the rebuilt chimney. We did discuss before the chimney was already recreated, and in the middle of their work, we did say they had to go to the board. So before they could put the new material for the brick on the existing brick to match what was originally on the structure, they stopped and they had to get the approval first. So that's why the brick, it's reconstructed, but the brick is not on yet. Okay, here's the front northeast elevation. Okay, here's a close-up of the reconstructed chimney. This area is on the north side, so this was previously approved. So this is the area where the outdoor kitchen is supposed to be, and the sides right there is supposed to be where the proposed tile wall is supposed to go. Okay, this is the front southeast elevation, as well as the south side. This is all of the main structure. There is an additional garage structure in the rear. And then this is the rear elevation where the side stairs are being proposed. Okay, this is their existing survey. This is what was previously approved, also existing to the site. So we can see there isn't a detached structure in the rear. They did have the approved driveways and the paver area for the pool. And so they've changed the material for the pool as well as added artificial turf. They've reconfigured some of the new fencing and walls with columns on the front, as well as the proposed tile wall for the kitchen area. And along with these stairs and the columns, or the railings for the front of the main structure's porch. Okay, so these are some elevations showing the existing approved elevations as well as the changes that are being proposed. So the rear gate right there, that one is technically behind the front setback. So the 5-foot height is not a concern there. Our main concern, which I can show, let me go back here. So here is where that proposed gate is on the north side of the property. This is further back on the site, so the 5-foot setback is not a concern. However, the proposal for the columns here on the front, within a historic district, fences, any type of vegetation, walls, columns can't be higher than a max of 4 foot. So in order for them to comply, they had to go to 4 foot instead of 5. So, okay, so then on the existing north side, we can see where the reconstructed chimney is going, along with the proposed tile walls and the aluminum railings. Okay, so on the west rear side, we can see the stairs as well as the chimney. The proposed, I believe they're keeping this style, and I believe the proposed fencing is a little bit north of the main structure towards the intersection of Marine Way and Second. Okay, this is a rendering of the tile wall. And here we have the sample for the tile wall as well as the paver material change. Here's a rendering of the backyard with the AstroTurf. Okay, this is an excerpt from the staff report, which specifically mentions the appropriate locations for artificial turf on historic properties. As the request only stays to the rear area of the yard, the area that includes the turf is considered appropriate to the site. Okay, these are the proposed fencing. So you'll notice the columns do have a max height of the 5 foot. So there is a site plan technical item noting that they need to be 4 foot before certification. These are the proposed exterior colors. And the Secretary of the Interior standards. So we noted standards 1, 2, 3, and 5. These do the requests, specifically the standards for these 5 requests are in the in our staff reports, and not for the most part, but they do comply with the 4 that are highlighted. And then we have the Delray Beach visual compatibility standards. So the ones that apply to this request would be the materials, texture, and colors, as well as the walls of continuity. And they meet both of these standards. Okay, we do note that the reconstruction of the chimney using the original brick material is considered appropriate and will not diminish any historic integrity of the structure. Okay, and then along with that, regarding all the materials that are being proposed, there are no concerns with regard to any colors or materials that are in this request. Okay, I did previously note the walls, and there will be, there is a site plan technical item in there to make sure that the height is at the 4 foot within the front and side setbacks. These are the site plan technical items. Okay, this is the proposed front rendering and the front northeast rendering. Okay, and that concludes my presentation.
Public comment? Seeing none, rebuttal from the applicant.
No, I think that was a great presentation personally, covered all the bases, and very, very happy to comply with all of the technical items that have been mentioned, especially we've both talked about the 4 foot fence, and we are both in agreement with it, so thank you very much.
Okay. Who wants to start us off on the board? Peter?
Sure. Another great project coming before us. I have nothing but support for it. I think it's another great example of what can be done in the historic district with the right resources, and I think the choices are good, and I can support it. Looks good.
Yes, I can agree with that. Project seems to be moving along nicely. I like the design. Oh, I don't like it. The choices are in line with the historic regulations. I did have a question though about the front fence. So hey Mark, does the fence have to be redesigned for the site triangle issue that I read in here, or is it going to be as is?
You want to do it? we need to show that the site triangle does comply. I think we're looking at the opacity aspect, if I'm not mistaken. Correct? Yeah. So we need to make sure that it's on there. We need to make sure we note the opacity of the fence in order to make sure that the site triangles are met. Am I stating that correctly?
So the location will stay the same, but there'll be an opacity rather than a jog?
Correct. There you go.
If I can add to that, we have what's called a stacking distance. And if the sliding gate's not visible from the right of way when they're coming in, he'll more than likely, if it's not opaque, then they'll have to set the gate back further. So we did discuss the code section. I believe it's in the staff report as well. But one of the site plan technical items was that they make sure that they comply with that. And if not, then they'd have to apply the stacking distance that's required within the LDR section.
And that could be an administrative approval if they...
It's usually when people kind of like add gates like this, a lot of this is done at permit, and we do ensure they have the site triangles and, they make sure they make the stacking distance. But because they were bringing everything else in, it was just better just include it, just so it was all part of one package. But
Okay. I think the tiles and the rear structure, it's not really visible from the street, I don't think, too much.
Not very much, and keep in mind the outdoor kitchen was already approved. It's mostly material selection, but it's really not very visible, especially once. I mean, you could see, even trying to take a picture from the southeast, how many trees were in the way to being able to see anything and everything like this. And this is behind the house, so correct. It's not very visible.
Okay. The steps make sense to not walk right into the pool, so I think that was a good move. Overall, I think it was a good job, and I am in support.
Thank you.
I had a question for staff. So the 4-foot fence, is that always been? And does that include any vegetation?
it is. So outside of the historic district, I believe they can go up to 6 foot in the front. But within historic, let me see, I'm pretty sure I have the code section in here. It's in 451 where it talks about fencing and walls, and any type of vegetation, fencing, anything like that that's in the front setback has to be at least maximum of 4 foot. And then
Can't
after
be over 4 feet.
not over 4 foot. And then after the front setback can go to 6 to 8. So
But actually, vegetation
it's not technically
can
but-
go taller.
That's why I'm like, whoa, like,
So this is, you're right, covered in 451, but it's also covered in 465. So both sections apply. 465 is like walls,
Right,
fences,
right.
for everything in the whole city. For historic, front yard and side street, the fence, the structure, the gate posts, column posts, those all have to be maintained no taller than 4 feet. The only time something can exceed is you see how they have this walkway leading up. You can have like a trellis feature over the walkway that can exceed the height.
And possibly you said the vegetation because it's not really considered a wall.
So that's covered in the other code
Okay.
section, not necessarily historic. Historic is specific to fences and walls.
Okay.
465 covers vegetation where there's limits. And that's where sometimes it's on the side setback, and people might utilize something that's not technically a hedge as a hedge, and we have trouble enforcing because they're saying, oh, they're trees. But it is the vegetation in the other code section. So like along the side, you can go interior side, you can go to 8 feet with your wall, fence, or hedge.
Okay. I just want to clarify for my own. 'Cause I'm like,
Yeah. For your yard?
Like, you might not want to try my house on Georgia, but for this particular project,
Especially when you're backing out on the George Bush.
listen,
And
it's
those
a
site
serious-
triangles.
The
Yes.
side triangles.
That Calusia has gotten pretty tall. No, but for this particular project, I mean, the house is so gorgeous. Like the 4-foot fence. I mean, why would you want to hide this beautiful home? So I think the project overall is, it meets the standards. Like you said, all of this certificate of appropriateness was addressed before, and I commend you on the chimney falling and going to all the extra work to put it back the way.
I'd like to briefly recognize the general contractor as well, especially the project manager. His name is DJ. DJ has been instrumental in making sure that ever since he's actually taken over as project manager for the general contractor, the project has run smoother, even though it's with the same general contractor. And he's been instrumental in making sure that things like that have been honored and kept in place. So I'd like to acknowledge his hard work.
John?
No, I have to say these last two projects make me smile. You know, they really are. It's I live in Lake Ida, and which I think we may rename Malibu East, with a lot of the modern stuff that's going on in there. And I don't know if there's a way we could make an incentive maybe to build. You know, there's a great combination of luxury. These are luxury homes, but they're modest. You know, which I think is something that unfortunately we're losing. And I understand there's a demand for those types of properties. I mean, South Florida has changed so drastically, especially in the past 3-4 years with the type of people that are moving here. But yeah, these homes make me smile. The colors that are being used, the splash wall in the back, the usage of the pool, the change in elevations, just all these things coming together. So yeah, I commend the effort. I know it's not easy. Yeah, and it makes me a little sad for what I see going on in the area where I live right now, and I love to call home. And as far as the general contractor, he does a lot of stuff around here, and he seems like he's got a great team in place. So glad to hear that he's doing a lot of this work. I think he did the other project as well. Was a GC on that one as well. So thanks a lot. Thanks for everything.
Thank you.
I've got just a couple of comments. And I guess this is as much to staff as to you. We've grappled with artificial turf several times, and then City Commission had their say in it. This is the first time I've seen a checkerboard of artificial turf. Is that somehow something we need to think about?
It's in the rear, so it meets the requirements of the code.
And I will say, if I can, my in-laws, they don't live in historic, but they have a checkerboard. And when you have that and you have real grass, every summer the landscapers would burn it. Mm-hmm. So they would have to have every individual square replaced. And that's so it just literally costs thousands of dollars. And I watched it happen year after year after year. And now they have artificial. And the artificial has come such a long way that it can look like real grass.
And real grass you have to water, so now you're watering your patio area.
Mm-hmm. So it was good. The artificial turf regulations that went into place, we didn't have any, and so it was complicated for us to know what was appropriate, what wasn't. And so I will remind the board when that went through public hearing and got adopted and all that, Historic did extensive research with other historic communities, so that supplemented the regulations when they were decided on. So while it was a bigger topic, we were very thankful to have been able to represent what was appropriate for historic, and that went into the code. So it's fine in the rear.
Okay. On the bricks, I think I heard you say that with the falling of the chimney, not all the bricks made it, and there were replacement bricks, and that they were specially treated to.
Well, yeah, they were. Not all the bricks made it. There were replacement bricks. I believe what happened was, in order to maintain a uniformity, there was an attempt made to be able to find brick that was extremely similar, and then it was all replaced. So you know how sometimes you go to try to replace something on one portion of your roof, there's absolutely no way to match it because what's been there has been there for 15 years and weathered, et cetera, et cetera. So a new material was sourced, and that material, in order to reduce weight and also to make sure that the veneer still applied properly, they actually hand cut with a tile saw a veneer off the front. So rather than being 3.5 inches thick like most bricks are, what's being applied is more like 3/4 of an inch thick, but it still looks the same, simply because it's just thinner.
So none of the old bricks are being used. Is that
correct?
What you're saying? Okay, because in my reading of the staff report, it appeared that the bricks were going to be reused.
Is something different, or
That's what we understood. The application was reutilizing the bricks that were taken off.
I will double check with DJ. I know that he's the one that was working through that.
I think they said they saved them on site to be
They
reused.
did say, okay, DJ was able to save.
And he brought them in, yeah.
Okay, perfect. Good. DJ's been closely working with the staff as well.
Okay.
Because
So
even
you
if,
stand corrected.
I do stand corrected.
Okay.
So even if, for instance, with this veneer scenario, you're able to get 2 out of 1. You're able to shave a piece of veneer off of each side of the brick.
Oh, okay.
So you're able to get double the application. So I can see where it would work.
2 more questions. We've wrestled with tiles a lot in the past that were in the back and trying to match the era, the design, the color, and so forth. Was any effort made, or what was the effort made to match the tile to the design of the house in the 1939 era?
The tile selection actually came through the interior decorator, and that was a coordination item with her as another designer on the project. So the selection process there. Andy, do you have anything on the tile that was selected, or
There was no original
that was recommended by
tile
Tiffany?
I understand.
to
Yep.
match.
Okay. It goes. Yeah.
That's what I wanted to hear.
It does go with the era, and that was driven by the interior decorator. So
Does she need to come to the mic?
If she's going to say any more, yes, and introduce herself, but it's okay. It sounds like
Oh,
she's
all
done.
right, okay.
No worries.
And just one final question. I didn't hear you say, but at that picture of the front, looks like the property is really raised quite a bit, and I'm just wondering, or the ground floor is raised quite a bit. Is that in keeping with the continuity on the street, or is it what?
This was
What-
under
that was under a
previous.
previous CA.
That was okay.
That went
So-
through
Sea
a,
level.
It was, yeah.
It was just about, 5 feet lower, right? Or
I've taken a look at it, and actually I have another project that's getting ready to be applied for through the board.
Yeah.
Momentarily, it's on the same street, and so I know quite a bit about the Marine Way water levels, and the fact that this one is where it is a very good thing.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, this was under a different architect. I think Kristen Kellogg was the applicant that came through with a previous submittal that included a minor increase in the finished floor elevation because it was already high when it was originally placed here and moved. And then FEMA went to 6 feet plus a foot for the building code, went to 7. We're actually about to go to 9 in this district. So it was a minor shift, but that happened with the previous
All right.
COA.
That's all the questions I have. Anybody want to make a motion?
I make a motion to approve the certificate of appropriateness 2024-134 for the property located at 170 Marine Way, Marina Historic District, by finding that the request and approval thereof is consistent with the comprehensive plan and meets the criteria set forth in the land development regulations.
Second.
Call the roll.
Chris Kemezis,
Yes.
Peter Dwyer,
yes.
Kristen Finn,
Yes.
John Brewer,
Yes.
Ivan Heredia absent, John Miller absent, Jim Chart.
Yes.
Great. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
Look forward to seeing you 2 more times coming up, too, in the way. Thank you all.
So,
So the first thing I want to address in reports and comments is our next meeting is July 3rd. And that we've decided we would poll the board and make sure that that's an okay meeting so that we don't end up without a quorum for you all to attend. So you guys good for our next month's meeting? Because the next day is 4th of July and City Hall will be closed that day, but we will be open on the 3rd.
I'm okay.
There is another date that would be offered if
We
not.
do
right?
have an alternative date a couple weeks later if needed. But are there any conflicts?
My schedule's fine for the 3rd.
same.
Yeah, I'm okay.
Shouldn't be an issue.
Yeah, looks
If
good.
you get home and you realize you've got an issue, would you just email myself and Kelly and Diane and let us know? in case I need to move it to an alternative date. Okay.
The 3rd is definitely better than the 5th.
Yeah, that's true.
Exactly.
Very true. I should put in for the 5th.
That was not the alternative date, though, just for the record.
Let's do Friday.
So that's all that I have, I think. He is gone, but we do have a new planner in training who started with us yesterday. And that planner in training is a level just slightly above interns, a part-time position that will spend it's an 18-month period of time. This is a student, and they will spend 6 months with our division, 6 months with current planning, and 6 months with long range. He was sitting right over here in the audience. Alessio McPherson is his name, so I'd like to welcome him, and if you see his face, that's who he is. The Cemetery Historic Resource Survey is underway. Consultant is in the field and on site. So we're excited for that project. They're going to run with us. We've got to get it done by the end of August in order to qualify for our state reimbursement on the grant. So that's a great, exciting thing. Under public comment, when Mr. Cope spoke about, what did he say here? That the Delray Beach Preservation Trust would be seeking designation of Veterans Park. We, of course, would provide any backup and research that we could to supplement their effort. That is our role, to provide records if needed. But I'm interested to hear what their plan is for that. Ms. Ravelis, who I think is still here, talked about Carver. And I do want to take time and speak with her offline, because some of the things that were stated, it's not how I understood the history of how where we've been and where we've come with Carver. So I'd like to talk with her directly, and maybe there are some things I didn't know about to get more information. But I do remind the board that a previous board forwarded an opinion, I think is how it was done.
I think it was the resolution of the Delray Beach
Preservation Trust
to
support the
support
designation of Carver. And then there was discussion at the city commission, and the city commission wanted to see the building saved. And so a letter was written and sent to the school district. What I heard spoken about at a recent commission meeting under public record from the school board, I have questions about, because it's, talking about demolition of structures that we initially said we wanted to see saved. But I also understand the why of what they're asking. So I would like to talk with her a little bit more offline, and I don't know if the board has anything that you would like to add. I think, Mr. Chard, you asked, what can the board do? So I think that's all I have.
I'm just concerned with all the other issues that are happening in Delray that this one gets lost, and that building too will be torn down. I think the state law and the mitigation plan for Carver was clear. I think the letter from the city manager was clear. And if we, as a board, have already opined on it, that why would we not just reiterate what we've already said?
So the problem I have fundamentally with the information that was spoken about by Ms. Ravelis and by something you just said, and how I understand the state's involvement in projects like this, perhaps there is something I'm not aware of and am missing, but there is not a state law that says they cannot demolish there is a process when federal funds are utilized for any project, a road project, construction, that a site that is designated or is older than a certain time period, 50 years or older, and has potential for historic integrity, be analyzed and documented through the Section 106 process. But I don't know of a state law that prohibits the school district from demolishing the structure. So this is what I want to double check myself to make sure I'm not missing something. I think as I remember it, the state's letter was, they wanted to see the structure saved, but they can't require it to be saved under the Section 106 process. So I think there needs to be some background research done on what's happening right now and what that narrative is, how it's being characterized, and education. So if I'm missing something, I can bring that to the board and say, yes, you were right, or I didn't know, or no, this is what it is. So that's what I'd like to have time to look into.
I don't think you can talk.
I was just wondering.
Yeah.
Because I can clear things up in about 3 seconds.
I would really prefer to do that offline.
Mm-hmm.
And we could speak, and then after we speak, I can bring it to you at our next meeting. Or, even send the board an email to say, I've spoken with Ms. Ravelis, and here's what we talked about, and we'll talk more under board comments next month.
I'm just uncomfortable with that, given.
If there are general recommendations, like you wanted to submit to the commission without knowing every single detail, I mean, you guys are welcome to do that. I would recommend, you come up with kind of like a little bit of an outline of like the issues that want to be touched, and then if if the board had consensus to, give the chair the ability to speak with Michelle to draft that memo to the city manager and on to commission, you guys could do that. You just have to have all of you agree. I just would want like the general topics and kind of like a little bit about what you want to say in it, and then you could give that consensus to have him work with Michelle to draft like the actual document. It still needs to maintain it, like what the board has said, but like the wording can be adjusted, so
I think the big difference in what was said before, what the commission has said, and what was recently spoken about during public comment at that commission meeting was the demolition of Building 2. That's the big shift that's different from the original intent or understanding of what was going to happen.
And even if it's as general as, we recommend that the city commission, lets the school board know that we want to save
Building
2, that's something that you can communicate.
So.
And it's a recommendation to the city commission that,
And we can do that this evening.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Certainly.
You could renew your memo that was sent before under a previous board with a new memo, adding your concern. You can do any of that. But the piece I want to talk with, the public about is the details. It's the details. And I don't think that changes the intent of what your concern is.
So can we get a consensus here? We don't have to do a motion or anything. We just get a consensus that you and
If you're going to do a memo, I think it would probably be best to just put a motion on the record that, you want to make a recommendation to the commission that whatever it may be, if it's that something be sent to the school board indicating the commission's want or need to save Building 2, or if it's that they communicate the resolution that you guys have previously dealt with on the trust preservation, whatever it is, just a motion saying that. And then the consensus part is that, you would work with Michelle just to draft that item. I don't think, like, it sounds like you guys are going to make something fairly general, so I don't think there will be too much, back and forth that needs to be had. But
Has any other board member known about this situation? Because it's the first I'm hearing of it, so I'm just uninformed on this.
Yeah, only because I'm part of the Delray Beach Historical Society, so we've talked a lot about Carver.
Mm-hmm.
Miss Paula Rocker is
Yeah.
a member, and
Paula,
she's
yeah.
brought it up several times. And so, yeah, I mean, it's a lot. There's a lot of history, and
Mm-hmm.
It goes back about 5 years.
yeah.
Further.
Well, I think formation of the Carver Historical Society
Yeah.
or something.
Carver something to save.
There,
like,
yeah. So what happened was there was a couple of women from the community, Paula Newman Rocker and I believe Brenda Williams, that came to staff and asked about future plans that they had heard about and had been hearing about through community meetings with the school district about the plans for Carver. And they wanted to see some preservation effect happen on the site. The Delray Beach Preservation Trust worked with Miss Newman Rocker in creating a historic designation report and wanted to submit that to the city as an application. And fundamentally, we struggled with that. Our applications have to come in as a complete application, and one of the pieces that was missing was consent from the school district. And so there were discussions that happened. The school district did not want to consent to the individual designation of the property. So this board discussed the topic. Miss Newman Rocker, Price Patton all came to meetings, and I think Miss Newman was on the board at this time, Miss Newman Rocker. So it went up the chain through a memorandum of what the board wanted to see happen. And the city commission talked about it at a public hearing with the school district, and they had an interactive conversation, and the commission said, we want to see these buildings saved. And so then a letter was written as the understanding. 1, 2, 12, the cafeteria, I think, were originally on the docket. The school district already talked about saving the gym as a multi-purpose use area and redoing the gym. So a letter went out to the school district about what buildings were not going to be demolished. That was the way the letter was written. And I think there were continual community meetings that happened with the school district and the community, the surrounding neighborhood, people who had interest in saving the building. Miss Newman Rocker and Price Patton reached out to the nonprofit advocacy group, the Florida Trust, and that's not a government agency, they're a nonprofit, and got the project listed on the 11 to save list, which that list is
What does that mean? I've heard that 3 times. I don't know what that means, 11 to
so
save.
that list is something that the Florida Trust puts together of projects or properties throughout the state of Florida that are at the highest risk for demolition or loss. So they're at the highest threat level. And it's a tool, basically, to bring awareness and try to get advocates in the community to engage in saving a building. That group, I think, also had the school in West Palm Beach, I don't remember the name of it, on their list once before, and the school district did preservation of that site. So it can be effective to bringing awareness to a cause.
I do think the crux of the matter here is not the state's role, but the fact that just like we try to preserve districts as opposed to individual buildings, they want to, the concept was to have part of the old Carver campus, and the buildings, of course, being part of that, and that by picking off one building at a time, we don't have that campus effect anymore.
So I think there's more to that with what the school district envisions for the site. So, I think the whole point of me saying this is because Mr. Cabeza said, I don't know what this is about. So I'm just trying to provide a framework to you and board members who may not know, so that if you are asking us to prepare a memo, you know what you're asking about.
Yeah, and if you're not prepared to, you know, like I'm just giving you the option, you know, if you're not prepared to make a motion today, you also don't have to, you know, that's completely up to you guys. I think I was just saying you can do it now because it sounds like Jim has some concerns about, you know, the timeliness of it. But if you would prefer that it be brought back on the next agenda or something like that for you guys to discuss more thoroughly, you're welcome to do that as well. So,
Chris, would you be
We could share
comfortable with the motion as expressed by Kelly?
It seems like the building is important, right? And I think I could be, but again, I'm very uninformed about
If
it.
I could just add, I was part of the Delray Beach Preservation Trust, and I remember this whole thing with Carver. Has anybody here gone to Carver?
Yeah.
You went to Carver?
I've toured the interior.
No, did you go to school there?
Oh, no, but
I went to school there in 8th grade.
I went to school at Congress, and
Yeah.
we used to play Carver in sports.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah.
And Atlantic used to be Plamosa.
Mm-hmm.
I went to that high school. I remember
too.
when the pool got put in, so have some history. Has anybody talked to the community about maybe what alternative uses could be done there?
There
we have a
have
real
been-
shortage of workforce housing. Maybe keep the gym
So
and
there-
build workforce housing.
The school
I know a lot of
district,
people
yeah.
in the community that have businesses. The Caesars. I've spoke to them about Carver. I don't really. I'm not hearing a strong opinion from a lot of the folks that I think have a vested interest there.
There is a strong opinion.
Okay,
And there
I'd
have
love to
been
hear.
community meetings that
Okay.
the school district has held with the community about adaptive reuse possibilities. It's not a city-owned property. Our role in the matter would be preservation as the preservation board. But yes, there have been many meetings about the potential for the site. Everything that you said has been discussed. You know, I would have to say that the school district should be telling us what they heard and what they intend to do as far as adaptive reuse. And we also have toured. We've toured the entire interior and extensively photographed the interior of the buildings.
John, I've been involved for about 4 or 5 years and attended many community meetings that were well attended, and a lot of Carver graduates got up and spoke. Some of whom have been city commissioners. And there are a number of alternative plans and uses for the site that are not settled. But this initiative that we're talking about tonight is just to make sure that it isn't settled for us by a bulldozer, which I think it would be good if we have a position on this and support some of the discussions that have been held at the City Commission and this history of documentation going back 10 years or so, without really knowing what the use is going to be of those buildings.
So I know there's other topics you want to get through.
Yeah, so if there's a motion now, if there's not, if you guys have consensus to maybe talk about it again, you could bring it back the next meeting. So it's up to you guys, but I agree with Michelle. I think you have other topics, so you just have to make that decision one way or
I
another.
understand that, but do we have a consensus? I think John may be on the fence.
Mm-hmm.
Chris is kind of on the fence.
I guess I'm on the fence. I'd like to learn more.
So
I'm on the board to resubmit our memo that was done and to empower you, as discussed. I think that would be a simple proposal.
Okay, so you've got 3, so if somebody
Yeah.
wants to make a motion to reiterate the sentiment of the memo that you guys had submitted before, and you guys can just attach that memo and just reiterate what was
I
said
think
in
that's
it.
clean.
Is that a motion?
I will make that motion that we resubmit our memo and empower Jim Chard to move forward with direct communication with planning.
Do we know how the memo reads?
Well,
Hopefully it's in support of-
it's in support. So I mean, do we? It would have to be.
I'd love to hear the memo if I'm going to vote on it.
Okay, I don't have a copy of it.
So,
I may be in
No,
agreement
that's a
with
good
it. I'm just
question.
trying
It's
to-
a good
trying to-
question, but
So the
Correct.
sentiment of the memo,
the sentiment of the memo.
and I don't know the word for word, was preservation of buildings 1, 2, 12, and may have included the cafeteria. Building 1 is where the original entrance to the school was. Building 2 is directly next door, and they moved the entrance down the building.
Mhm.
Building 12 connects off to the side, and then the cafeteria is, where the cafeteria is, right? So the plan was this board sent to commission through the city manager, we want to see these buildings designated, I think is what it said, and saved. So then the commission took that memo and had discussions. So the renewal of that memo you would attach, and I think the new memo would say that this board, perhaps what you say is, renews your interest in preserving buildings 1, 2, 12, and the cafeteria on the property. That's how I would write it if I was writing it right now. And I can share the memo with all of you after tonight, tomorrow, and I can also share the designation report that the Delray Beach Trust prepared so that you can have a history, a framework of what the historical significance is.
I think one thing that does play in here is Thurgood Marshall played a very big role in that
Thank
school.
you for saying that. So we're talking about buildings. So Gustav Moss was, I'm glad that you are triggering me to say this. Gustav Moss, the architect, designed the buildings at Carver. He designed many buildings, including the train station right here west of 95, other school buildings, residential structures. He is one of the Legacy 5 architects in Palm Beach. They have his set of plan records. He's highly revered.
Yeah, I think we learned a lot about him the last meeting.
Okay.
The house
That's
that's
right,
being
I remember.
redone by the church.
And Thurgood Marshall's involvement with the site is he came to Delray at the request of the staff, and this was, this is a black school at the time. The schools in the community were segregated, and the male teachers at the school wanted equal pay for being teachers. And so his involvement in that lawsuit led to Brown versus the Board of Education, which is a United States landmark case for the ultimate racial segregation stopping in this country, the practices that were happening. That there's roots for that here, and that's what the state of Florida has so been interested in. Of course, they're interested in the architectural, but that cultural and political piece is highly important to the campus. I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because I know it all, but I'm not saying it all to you. So there is just so much importance culturally and historically. When we do designations, we go through a list. Does it meet architectural? Does it meet age? Does it meet cultural? It checks all
That's
these
the first time I've
boxes.
heard those things, so I appreciate you bringing them to my
Yeah.
attention.
Thank you to Jim for mentioning.
Thanks, Jim.
He triggered me.
Yeah, I'm not on the fence anymore. I think that was helpful.
I didn't know Thurgood Marshall, and it's funny because I've been serving on DBPT. I didn't know Thurgood Marshall. I didn't know the Gustav Moss angle. So this is
Yeah.
all interesting stuff, So thank you so much, and thank you, Jim.
Yeah. I'm glad that you said
I
that.
hope it's in the
Thank you.
memo.
I'd love to see it in the memo. Yeah, I've been told not to sign things I don't read first. So
Yeah.
find it for you.
Good
but-
advice.
Good job.
So I guess there is a motion and a second.
I'll second.
Call the roll.
It's just to confirm it. Basically what Michelle had said is that motion. That is what you guys want the motion to be. That you would reiterate what you had said in the past, and that confirm that you would like to see the buildings and the cafeteria saved,
Preserved.
preserved.
All right.
And if you want, you can, I'll be working directly with the chairperson. Once it's done, we'll send the whole board a copy of the memo that will be sent on. But yeah, it's about reiterating your commitment to seeing the property preserved.
Are we ready to call the roll?
Mm-hmm. Chris Cabezas,
Yes.
Peter Dwyer,
Yes.
Kristen Finn,
Yes.
John Brewer,
Yes.
Ivan Heredia is absent, John Miller absent, Jim Chard.
Yes. So it's 8:20. And I was hoping that this would be the month that we would talk about another letter that went to the city commission and has been forgotten about largely by the city commission, which is the idea of historic preservation, not for the man-made world, not for the built world, but the natural environment. I think you have all, I don't know if anybody has an appetite for discussing it tonight, and tell me if you don't, but we have been putting this off for about 6 months, and I know you've all received probably twice the presentations and the documents that were sent. The thing that I've been asking for staff is that we have the opportunity to present it to the new commission. And also, we're basically a new board since that was done 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago.
December 2021. So what I have on if I only wish that I had known there was going to be a public comment about Carver, because I could have had that memo tonight too. But this is just the memo, and I've sent this to you on email. I thought I'd bring it tonight in case the board wanted to see what was said and in case you wanted to talk about it. But I think Kelly and I have talked about this, and the board will have to decide, do you want to discuss this under board comment tonight? Is there consensus for that? How would you like to proceed before we jump into what it says?
Yeah, and if there's consensus to add it to an agenda in the future, you could put it under as a presentation item, and Jim could bring it forward. Sorry, Mr. Chair could bring it forward and present it to you guys as he's done in the past about this issue. So we just need to be consensus.
I would propose that we make it an agenda item going forward. Take it through the
there-
normal.
I agree. I second that.
Okay.
Okay, so it looks like there are 3 of you, 4 of you.
I don't care. I can discuss it tonight or at a later date.
Okay, so there's consensus, so we'll just move to the next available agenda that it's possible to put it on
As a presentation item.
as a presentation item.
Right, that it
Yes.
doesn't get pushed out.
Yeah.
And sorry to go backwards on this, but you did have consensus to give Jim the authority to speak with
We
Michelle about, okay.
It was in
I just
Mr.
wanted to make
Dwyer's
sure.
motion. Yeah.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
John, any comments that you have?
No.
Or is the board comments?
Why am I being singled out?
You're not. You're just the first of the people who
No,
has
so
the
I'll
opportunity.
tell you what, I do have one question, just kind of put in everybody's, being a member of SPRAB, we did have some things come up with the large trees, especially back around where, I guess the marina. So I guess the one thing we have to talk about is how can we tell somebody that owns a piece of property that has a tree in there, that may be a legacy tree, that they cannot sell that property to somebody, that the tree would have to stay. You know what I mean? I think we were trying to figure out covenants. We've tried to work with this thing
Right.
before, so just to kind of throw it out there. I mean, with Chris and Peter and so many,
Right.
Those are the things I think we're going to have to address as we try to craft something. I think, what's highest and best use for a property? Do we have the right to tell a property owner? And are we opening the city up to lawsuits? those are things I
Those
think.
are all
we
good
would-
questions.
Some other cities are so strict with their tree removals and like code enforcement that in that stage, they just don't even let the tree get removed. When there's a plan submitted for removal, they'll just deny it in that level. So that's how some other cities do that.
So if you bought a property and it has that tree on it and you've had it for 20 years and then you want to sell it, they can basically tell the new purchaser, you can't move that tree, you can't touch
But
that
they couldn't
tree.
do it either.
Well, we're getting into discussion.
Yeah, yeah.
And
All right.
I have things to add
All right, yep.
because that's not all exactly how the law is.
There may be some cities or counties that have been able to do that because maybe they had something in their ordinances predating certain things. So,
Yeah.
not having reviewed
Exactly. We
it
go through
right
that all
going
the time.
into this,
A tree, we want to remove a tree because the owner wants to, and they just deny it. They just you can't do it. So we have to design.
So like
design
Kelly
around
is
it.
saying, there are things that, yes, but are we having the discussion tonight?
No.
Or are we going to have it at a future meeting?
I think he was just saying, let's think about that when we do discuss it.
Absolutely, because there are things we need to inform the board about and the struggles that we deal with when we're moving applications through the process and the Florida statutes and our own code and things like that. So I want to share it. I'd love to talk about it, but
Okay.
I think we're going to have it as a presentation, hopefully at our next meeting, which Mr. Chard will give the presentation as he did previously. So you may want to go back and rewatch December 1st, 2021.
Thank you.
But I'll have the same presentation queued and ready to go.
Are there examples in there? Of,
Yes.
yeah. Okay.
And then we can engage in a discussion, the board can, and anything we can supplement to help with the requirements of our current code.
John, any other thoughts?
That's it.
Kristen?
If you'd like, I do have what the motion was the prior time, if you'd like to know. The motion on the Carver High School, I was able to find it in the minutes if you'd like to hear it. I just figured since you guys are all here, I'm not going to be able to tell you afterwards. But motion to make a recommendation to the City Commission for continued support from HPB for the preservation and designation of Carver High School property. And it was made by Claudia Willis and seconded by John Miller, and it was changed to continued preservation, maintenance, and designation of the historic Carver High School. So it was a little bit different than what you guys said, but you would reiterate that and what you said today.
John might sign that. Since he went to 8th grade there.
So now you know.
Hell of a year, let me tell
Sorry,
you.
I couldn't find it. Sorry, I couldn't find it before the
1979.
motion. Just wanted to let you guys know.
Any comments?
Nope.
Peter?
No, thank you.
Shall we
Kristen?
close this
No, I
meeting?
don't have it. He asked me earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
All right.
That's good.
Do you have anything, Michelle?
I don't think so. I mean, we're just running fast with all kinds of things happening, and I hope I didn't forget anything. I think.
You can email them.
I think.
Oh, I do have one thing. I mentioned last month about the pink building, the rectory, and I noticed when I went by there, the thing that was shifted was now stabilized. So I don't know
Yeah.
what they did or what you guys did, but whatever was falling is now
Stable.
boxed up.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was like shingles and stuff falling, and I'd mentioned it, and you were gonna take a look at it. So.
Yes, we did. I didn't mention anything, but I think their representatives may watch meetings. I don't know. But they've also been really on top of construction, and I don't know if I told you this last time, but we have monthly construction meetings with them and stay on top of them on any issues, and they're quick to stay on top of us. We're, communicating to try to keep things as streamlined as possible. There are just so
Are they
many.
coming before us again next month?
I don't know when they will come back, but they have an application in right now. I don't know when that will happen.
Well, it just goes to show this is a very action-oriented board. We get stuff done.
Yes,
We try.
Yeah, I think tonight was productive.
yes, thank you all.
Thank you.
So you have a motion to,
Yes, we did.
oh, you did already? Okay.
Just give it a little gavel. Adjourned.
There you go.
There you go.
Okay,
Good job. Thanks, Jim.
thank you all.
Thank you all.
Always informational. Learn so much.
Yeah, when I heard the Thurgood Marshall, yeah, organizing